everybody. Welcome to another episode, Agent Boost Podcast. Today, we're doing Thanksgiving special, day before, and we got Bryan Smith on. And anyways, pretty excited. Bryan, go ahead and introduce.
Bryan is actually the fourth Hardle brother. So,
well, where's the third?
Yeah, the third is also kind of in the industry, but
he didn't make it over the hump.
He's certified, I think.
Yes. But Bryan, go ahead and kind of introduce yourself. Tell them your role and kind of your background and what you do here. And
well, happy to finally be on the podcast.
Bryan was a little slighted. He's been a little offended that it's taken till
the
mid-teens before we had Bryan.
He should have been the second or third episode.
Yeah.
But. Well, I remember doing one before with Dan that just went nowhere. He's like, "Yeah, that didn't really work."
The Dirt podcast.
Yeah. Well, that was the beta podcast before we started rolling.
Right. Well, anyway, hey everybody, my name is Bryan Smith. I've been in the industry for about a decade. Dan got me started in the industry back like a decade ago, but I remember distinctly you said, "I need your help, but I don't have time to train you. So I'm going to get you a job."
Bryan. Thanks.
I'm going to get you a job with a carrier partner. And he did, and went really well. I was at the carrier partner for a little bit and then branched out.
So we've known Bryan for 20 years. Yeah.
To be honest, I outed you more than that on a previous podcast. We told him you worked at Humana. Thank you for being very political. But so Bryan actually worked as a market point agent at Humana. Went back to Kentucky, did the whole training, right, with Humana, which we always give them props and kudos. They do a great job when it comes to those career agents and the intensive training process. So
apparently Bryan didn't listen to the podcast episode 2 episodes ago when we talked about his great Humana training in Kentucky.
I did. I just didn't quite transition.
Escaped his mind.
So Bryan was a market point agent there for a couple, I think 2 years, something like that, bit of time, and then transitioned out of that role and actually came back to work here at Agent Boost Marketing, right?
So, absolutely, yeah, great. And I tell people all the time, because I do get a lot of compliments about the knowledge, the Medicare knowledge that I've retained and that I continue to look for and seek out. But a lot of it was due to that training that I had in Kentucky, where you have Medicare rammed down your throat 8 hours a day for 3 weeks straight. So it's kind of hard not to come out with something. So
yeah, and to kind of give context to those listeners, Bryan's he's our VP of Medicare sales, right? So Bryan is one of our VPs, and he's actually come through the ranks, so to speak, from working at a carrier to a very evolved role over here at the agency over the last almost 10 years now. So
yeah, and I've had to put my sales hat back on this last AHIP.
It's been great to so Bryan, for all those, I would like to. I'm always very transparent. I still have agents asking me very, get a lot of minutia and things very specific or granular when it comes to Medicare. Personally, I haven't produced for a couple of years now. I've been out of the game. I wear a lot of hats.
A couple times 4.
I wear a lot of hats around here. So I'm not in the trenches, so to speak, anymore. And so I really defer to Bryan a lot more. He's become like the resident expert, here at the company, that all things Medicare, I typically am deferring to Bryan. And so anyways, I tip my hat to you. You've done a great job. Bryan's always the one out there pursuing information. He's pursuing the knowledge. I mean, Bryan's reading the research papers from DEFT. He's on webinars from different carriers. He's on Optum trainings. He's learning about value-based care. I mean, Bryan's really, the one digging into all things Medicare.
Yeah, and when I started out, I really had a knack for that, provider-based marketing, because that's where Humana was really focused at the time, grassroots efforts. So that's kind of what I've been helping a lot of field agents do, moving through this industry, and just trying to get that little arrow to put in their quiver as well, because that is from what I see in the industry, it's back on the rise. The traditional grassroots efforts, feet on the street, it's coming back.
Yeah,
absolutely. And
you're talking coming back post-COVID. We've talked about that a couple times on the podcast, that a lot of the things that were working pre-COVID are coming back. Everybody's not terrified as we enter into the third year of the winter of death and destruction.
The 5th Omicron.
We all, some of us are still here. So people are going back to doing business. But yeah, well, what are you seeing this year? Give us some ideas of gaps in knowledge that agents have, things that come up where you're surprised to hear that they don't know, that come up pretty routinely.
Well, just like any job or any, thing you learn in school, if you don't maintain that level of, study and knowledge, you're going to lose a lot, right?
Yep.
I have gaps in my own, knowledge that I learned in school. I couldn't do math. I can't do my kids' math anymore. It's ridiculous. The new math, whatever it's called.
Common Core.
Yeah. But no, just like I field calls daily, like from experienced brokers that are, that have been in this industry for, 15 plus years even. Just asking remedial questions about, certain things here or there. What, Part B, what's the new Part B Medicare deductible? Like, honestly, a lot of things that can be Googled, but, people want information now, and a lot of times,
a text is easier than
a quick text or a phone call.
Than reading through some Google pages.
Then jump on a computer, yeah.
Yeah, we joke all the time about when we got into the industry, all of us, Google, the internet was at scale. It makes us sound old, but it was only like 2006, 7, 8, and there was a lot of information on the internet, but not with Medicare and Medicare Advantage because they were newer products, right? All that content and information hadn't been proliferated across the internet, so you couldn't go Google anything or watch a podcast or anything like that because there just wasn't the content available. But nowadays, we always joke that, people, if I walk through the call center or something, they'll ask me some obscure question or some, market specific, and I'm like, I'm glad you think that I am the oracle, that I know everything that there is to possibly know about every plan and every market.
Yeah, but how often, though, when that happens, do you literally go to their computer and open up a new tab and then go into Google and then go type in this key search phrase? Here it is on this webpage. And then,
Siri, what is the Medicare Part B premium for 2024?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
and look, let's be honest. We actually love the agents. We love agent distribution, but we're always, like everything, there's the train the trainer model out there with a lot of different industries, not just ours. But the whole idea is that we do want to train agents, but at the same time, we want them to be critical thinkers. We want them to go look for the resource and the answer first, and then come to us if, hey, where's a good source for this? Or, hey, I've gotten 3 or 4 different answers. What is it? What's the context? But I would say that probably 90% of the information that people actually need is out there and it's accessible, I would think.
Yeah, but to the field agents' credit, a lot of them are still doing that road warrior, windshield, mentality where they're, appointment to appointment, especially now, right, during open enrollment time. So having a resource like us here at the brokerage, just to make a quick phone call and get a quick answer or a text message.
You're the NCIS support.
Yeah, that's
CTU from Jack Bauer's 24 days.
It's kind of true.
Yeah, but they love it though. They love being able to have a dedicated person to reach out to, and I have no problem helping out that way. And I just took a call yesterday. An agent sent me. It was funny. He sent me the link to the article and asked me to read it and give him the
synopsis.
Cliff notes.
Synopsis, yeah, Cliff Notes. And I'm more than happy to do it because that was something I didn't even know was happening in the industry. It was a new federal plan, Medicare prescription drug plan that's coming out, and people are being passively enrolled into.
You're talking about the Blue Cross, the Blues,
Aetna as well.
Yeah,
Aetna Federal, Blue Cross Federal.
Yep,
the federal plans. Yeah. There's a lot of legislation that changes that doesn't make a big splash or people don't hear about, and then it kind of almost up trickles into the industry like that too. So there's definitely a lot of cases like that. I think that we're finding more and more these days.
Yeah, and I would even speak to macro. That was my big thing. I was pounding that that hammer a lot about. Everyone was talking about, you can't sell Plan Fs anymore, and that was the big sticking point. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? They overhauled the entire provider payment system and methodology in the entire country, and they're going more away from fee-for-service. This is instrumental and game-changing in the industry, and we're talking about Plan Fs going away. Things like that to your point are very large, items, and they somehow slide under the radar.
It may seem minuscule and small when you're looking at it at a little blog post or something, but
Yeah, there's a lot of
affects us a
ACA
lot.
things that are trickling down right now too, or that are coming out once everybody kind of has the opportunity to digest the details of like these massive legislations and these multi-thousand page bills. And then they kind of find these little carve outs and these little, you know, like the whimper exemptions and things like that, or the five, you know, there's all sorts of businesses and side ancillary things. And
Well, you don't see the repercussions from it, or the direct or indirect results. You don't see them for 12 to 18 months.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
yeah, there's always all sorts of things coming out. What are some other things, you know, industry wide that you hear? I mean, I heard one recently. Someone asked us about, you know, mail handlers and how Advantage plans coordinate with mail handlers. And
Yeah, I had just that the other day as well. Wasn't necessarily mail handlers, but it was, you know, more or less on the veteran side of things, you know, TRICARE versus VA benefits, how that coordinates. And, you know, I have been kind of introducing agents in the field to, you know, to Facebook and those groups and whatnot, because you can get a lot of, you know, you can get a lot of insight from other brokers in the community.
We might as well plug that we have a Facebook page too.
We do
right now.
You want to name that?
We're
Medicare, ACA, and Life, sponsored by Agent Boost.
yes,
Facebook group.
We rarely advertise and like very directly promote ourselves on this podcast, but yeah, that's one where I'm like, hey, we might as well show some love to our very own Facebook group that we have out there.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm part of like 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll post to all of them at the
And,
same time.
and just FYI, you don't have to be one of our contracted agents to join the group. If you
No,
just want to
not at
be
all.
in the community and you want to be able to post questions and you want to get answers to things where, you know, pin
We'd love for you
resources.
to, yeah, we'd love for you to contribute and pin resources, and we actually won't subvert your actual good content, because you don't want other agents to see good content from other people, even
Yeah.
though it's not overtly recruiting.
It's-
That
well,
happens to us all the
We're,
time.
we're the open platform, we'll call it, on
Yeah.
our groups. Okay, we're not limiting who can post what.
There's some Mark Zuckerberg style censorship going on some of those.
Yeah. Well, I
some of
tell
those
the
groups.
agents, I mean, if you're going to ask questions on those platforms, be ready to get answers you don't want, and answers that are not compliant, answers that are not true.
But here's
I
the
mean-
thing: is over time, you understand. Like, you'll see people who are commenting regularly, and you know who are the trolls and
Yeah.
who are legitimate sources of information that you can trust.
I always am amused too, because there's a lot of questions in a lot of these Facebook groups where I'm going, number one, how did you even pass your insurance license? How did you pass AHIP or your FFM certs? How did you pass any sort of carrier certifications if you are literally asking these type of questions? You know, like, hey, I just sold this person and I put them on a Part C. Remind me, is that one of those Medicare Advantage? You know, really very basic, rudimentary. And I'm like, oh, do the Michael Scott cringe face, you know, where I'm going, somebody
Well-
did not get the best agent support
Yeah,
there.
Every year I do download all slides from AHIP, you know, even the slides that don't ever change, you know, the modules 1 and 2. I download them all, and that's a lot of times I'll just have that as an email template. People ask me, you know, questions, I just forward them all the slides. I'm like, you should probably go back and
Control
read
F,
through.
search
Yeah.
this. Yeah,
It works very well, absolutely, and you can get a lot of answers just in the AHIP.
right.
It's very, but it's funny to me that the industry assumes that you're ready to sell just because you pass AHIP and the carrier certifications. There's so much more to it.
Well, what I find, shout out. Well, I'm gonna spill the tea on some of these agents, but agents now know that if they wait a couple weeks or months after AHIP, they can Google the answers, and I'm like, how does that help you? How does that help you to Google the answers of the job in which you're going to perform, and then
Right.
you don't even know how to answer your client's questions? You cheated your way through.
Or you don't even know what you can compliantly do or not do.
Yeah.
And-
So who's benefiting from that? Your own laziness is working against you. You know, you don't have the knowledge. No one's going to be there to whisper the questions. You can't go alt tab Google the answer when you're trying to, you know, have a sales encounter with
Well,
people.
and not only that, but like it all goes back to, we talk about it a lot of this is just not how it was. It's always changing, and you have to be a true professional. And so if you don't know what's changing from year to year, like granted, 70, 80, 90% of the content in AHIP each year is redundant and it's the same, but that 10% that changes year to year is significant. And so if you're not cognizant of exactly what is changing, how can you even navigate the system? How can you do well?
Well, let me clarify a little bit. When I said the remedial questions I get on traditional Medicare A and B and stuff like that, like what's the Part B deductible? Those are coming. I did say, 15-year veteran in the industry. True, that did happen, but most of the time, it's from agents that are not engaged in Medicare sales all year long. They're the AHIP agents that wake up in September and decide, I'm gonna go make some money.
Which hey, we appreciate those agents that are trying to do it and hustle, and we appreciate all of them, regardless if an agent writes 400 apps a year, if they write 10 apps a year. We appreciate it. They're trying to the best of the ability with their situation, but yeah, they definitely have a difficult time navigating the industry, navigating technology, all the changes when you're not living it all the time.
Right. But for the most part, the questions do pertain to advanced concepts.
So give us an example. What else? Not just Part B deductibles. What's something that
we had that one about coordination with mail handlers, which you can be at both, but
like OPM. Are we talking like not just mail handlers, but OPM in general?
Yeah,
it's office
suspension forms from the OPM, and
so we're talking like this is again you can follow up with we have it in our training portal, that kind of stuff for our agents, but it's how when you talk to a federal retiree, they use OPM, the Office of Personnel Management. You can go there and you can either get an Advantage plan and coordinate it with it and keep it, or you can suspend it with a form,
But one of the questions I did receive to that fact was you cannot suspend it when moving to a Medicare supplement.
Correct.
Yep.
And that's just industry knowledge, but if you never dealt with that before,
but there's
I can understand.
A lot you can read about with suspending my FEHB, benefits, federal employee health benefits.
Yeah, there's a document that I always used to reference. I don't know if it's been updated recently, but it was the Who Pays First document. It was called Who Pays First. Yep. That's always a good one that you can just Google that's put out from CMS, and it literally spells out like in cases of multiple insurances, of federal employees, of small groups, large groups, who goes first, the group or the Medicare plan or the Advantage plan. That's a very helpful document, Who Pays First.
And by the way, for all the agents that are out there, listening to this right now, one of the things that I've always told agents to do, and I still repeat it, is either go get your hands on a tangible Medicare and You handbook.
I was going to say that to you.
Or download the PDF if you're doing your presentation on your Surface, your iPad, whatever it is. Make sure and have the Medicare and You handbook, because frequently when I would go to those sales encounters, those sales appointments, I would have everything memorized from the Part B premium to Irma amounts to this, to that. And after asking them a few qualifying questions, I would know exactly what plan I'm putting them on very quickly. But the problem is I can't say, trust me, because I'm an expert and I've written 1,700 of these Advantage plans, even though that's the case. It was, I want to see it from a source of truth that I can trust. And so it'd be like, oh, hey, that question that you had, it's right here on page 57 of the Medicare and You handbook. And then it eliminates that sales obstacle and gets you over the hump, closer to closing the sale. It doesn't have some lingering doubt in their mind, and it helps you close the deal. So
you taught me that. I learned that from you, and you showed me, like when you were teaching me that, you pulled it out of your desk, and that was actually out of your brown
satchel
you used to carry around.
Oh, I would. Yeah.
But then you showed me all the tabs, and to this day, I still do that same thing. I grab that Medicare and You handbook, and it answers all those, questions about federal coverage, who pays first, everything.
I knew all the FAQs that I would get from clients and prospects, and I would literally tab out in the Medicare and You handbook, those 8-10 tabs. So right when I'm in the appointment, I would go right to the page, show them. The other thing I would show them is like the Health and Human Service insignia and seal, and be like, hey, this is from the government. This is from CMS and HHS. So if you're getting other things that look very government official, they're probably not. You should be looking for this. And I would kind of coach them on all
CMS doesn't send that out to everybody anymore, right? When did that stop? Pre-COVID? Well, year before COVID?
What, the Medicare and You
when
handbook?
They would send them out to each beneficiary every year.
They still get it.
Every beneficiary? I don't think so. You have to opt into it
If they're
now.
Paperless or they've opted to be paperless, then they don't get it.
Yeah. So there's two tactical resources that we referenced. The Medicare and You handbook that comes out every year that's free. You can download the PDF. You can share it with your clients. And the Who Pays First guide. One of the things that I see agents getting that are new agents, especially on the Medicare and the ACA side of things, is they don't actually know how Medicare works, specifically how Advantage plans are funded, and they don't know how to answer that question of, well, how is this free or they
Too good to be true
they
question,
automatically assume that since there's a no premium, even new agents are like, well, this must be crappy insurance. And when they think of it compared to a supplement, it's like, oh, supplement is good insurance. Advantage plans are for dumb, stupid, poor people who can't afford anything, you know. And it's like, no, it's the funding model.
It's the funding model, but it's also the care model.
Correct. Yeah.
So
and so we can get into that at a later time too. But the other thing I see that agents get into the business, they get used to just like asking about benefits. Like, well, how's your plan? And they get lazy. Like, well, what are some benefits you need? Oh, you're good. That they don't actually know how to take the time and take a step back and explain how Medicare works, explain that these people paid into the system their whole lives, go through and do like a proper needs analysis.
Right.
And then because what we've always found is if you can explain the hows and whys of how Medicare works to people, those people will remember you and they'll be your clients forever. And they will know that you're an expert, and they won't want to go with any of these stupid call center advertisements they see on the TV or some willy-nilly international telemarketer, because they know that you're an expert because you deeply explained them.
Well, it matters who you ask as well. So even down to the carrier partner, right? So there's agents that are, you know, asking a specific carrier partner, what do I do in this situation with TRICARE member? He's got TRICARE for life. He really wants these extra benefits associated with the Medicare Advantage plan. What's the ramifications of that? One carrier partner will say, just thank them for their service and be on your way.
Yeah.
Don't sell them anything. Others will say, well, you should probably do this and this, MA only, whatever. When it comes to, you know, to me, I know the intricacies of that. Well, you can,
and let's be candid too. I mean, honestly, broker managers are not created equal. We can all speak to that.
Correct.
So, you know, you have
Zing.
you have like one broker manager that is like an FNG, so to speak, a brand new person that is not good and barely can spell Medicare with crayons, you know. And then you have other broker managers that are very experienced, that have been around the industry for 15 years. And so, you know, depending on if you're especially a new agent and you go to the carrier, you're expecting to get legitimate answers and a great resource, but that's not always the case.
Well, not just broker managers, but agent support, right? Like carrier support, because a lot of times
it's all over the board.
Yeah, and they're ramping people up before AEP or these enrollment seasons, and they're undertrained, understaffed, and they're supposed to be answering questions that a lot of times are very complex, convoluted, sophisticated questions. And then you're asking somebody that just went through a 1 week training, you know, how to solve these complicated problems in a big ecosystem of a corporation. And a lot of times
it's one-sided.
And I would just say it just speaks to like the critical role of like IMOs or FMOs, that layer in the industry and what we do, because I think there's still a very conceptual misunderstanding of what our proper role is too and all that.
So what were you going to say? Do you want to put yourself on the hook for what you were going to say about coordinating with benefits on TRICARE?
Well, a lot of, you know, I see a lot of brokers that will approach a TRICARE employee and maybe send them get them a Medicare Advantage only plan with no prescription drug coverage, so they can also get them a little bit of money back on their Part B if one of those plans exists in that area. What they don't know is that it will leave, you know, if you do give them a true MAPD plan, it will coordinate benefits with their prescription drug and leave them with zero out-of-pocket copay.
But they need to find a TRICARE pharmacy
depending on the pharmacy you go to
bill both parties.
If they balance bill,
so they don't have to do reimbursements on their claims.
Right.
Yeah. So there's those little
list of those pharmacies that do that.
Yeah, and there's those nuances. That's what I try to explain to agents when you really dig into it. That's where we're different than a lot of people, because that's pretty granular knowledge that I don't care who you check with. There's not very many IMOs, FMOs that have that skill set and knowledge and ability that can go disseminate that information to agent distribution.
Yep.
There's just not.
Yeah, and a part of that's one of the things that I always talk about that makes us unique is all of our leadership at Agent Boost has actually produced business, right? Yeah. Nobody is in our business that hasn't actually essentially leveled up from sitting at the kitchen table and doing the business to, you know, we just kind of know theory and we know how it works, but we've never actually done it ourselves. And as Bryan was saying, he's even selling a little bit. You know, we all occasionally we keep our feet in the dirt just enough to know to know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
You have to.
That is a big mantra that we have here, and I've tried to intentionally establish it that way to where I can't hire people that just can talk concept. That they need to walk the walk. They need to actually do it and perform it, so they can speak from a authoritative position of this is how it works. I've done it. I know it. So,
what have you heard anything? What are some agents doing? Field agents that are having some rebounding success post-COVID, that things that were kind of slowing down or weren't working as much? Are you seeing any agents doing really well with the old way of doing things?
Yeah. So, this past pre-AHIP, certification season, whatever you want to call it, there's always expansion markets that we hear about, around July, right? A lot of agents just, if it's not in their market, they don't even look at it. So it's important, and I'm teaching agents that it's important to look at the whole nation as a whole when it comes to marketing and strategy and where you're going to put money in to develop your marketing plan. And a lot of times it turns into, well, I'm not licensed in that area. Well, let's get you licensed. Do you know it's only $72 to get a license in that state where they're expanding, in 12 counties? And it just turns a light on in their mind, like, well, then that triggers a whole lot of other questions. Well, how do I do this over the phone? How do I sell this? How do I do that? So when we can give an agent the full scope of everything they need to produce over the phone and be compliant, man, it's a game changer night and day. So that's one of the things that's been working is expansion market.
Well, I'll dig into that a little bit deeper, because I think I know what you're alluding to. Is there's agents that target those expansion markets for a couple of reasons. Number one, a lot of the brokers that exist in those footprints are not savvy Medicare brokers that have been selling supplements and advantage plans, and they're not appointed, and they don't represent a broad scope of carriers, and they don't have a lot of that industry knowledge and experience. And so
they sold them their tractor insurance and their supplement.
Yeah, they sold them farm insurance and whatever else, and PNC, and so they're not really experts, so to speak, in Medicare. And so it's an opportunity for other experts to get in there. And then the other thing that happens is when there's an expansion market where there have not been MAPD products, then those sales or transactions you make are new to Medicare's, so the commissions are double. So when you're, from a business perspective, looking at spending dollars and looking at the apps or enrollments you're going to write, every single transaction you're making is double commission, and so that ROI pencils out a lot better.
Absolutely, yeah. So. Also, you have to really take in consideration the whole, landscape of the Medicare Advantage market and where that trajectory is headed. And as to your point about all the depth research that we're a part of, we get those those research papers and whatnot, and I read a lot of that. The future is Medicare Advantage. Yeah, it absolutely is. We've cracked 51% of total beneficiaries on Medicare Advantage plans in the nation. So that's why we're going to see more expansion throughout the U.S.
Look, and agents will disagree with us on the podcast, and there's those out there that very much dig in their heels. Oh. Look, I'm not telling you that supplements aren't a good product or fit for people. They certainly have their place, but it's not the staple. It's not what the majority of consumers are going to pick. And that trend continues to progress year after year after year.
Yeah, we just saw all the reporting, all the actual data shows that all the carriers are seeing less and less, year over year, about 10% less enrollments every year.
The standalone drug plans are experiencing a huge, change in that industry as well. So that's
they're all correlated, of course, because that's part of that.
When you couple a $260 a month Medicare supplement and a $40 drug plan, you're over $300 a month, and that's almost equal to an out-of-pocket max on a Medicare Advantage.
Yeah. So cautionary tale, going back to your expansion, use case or example that you had. The one thing I also get with that is, agents will go dive into those expansion markets and go, I could have written X amount more, but the doctors weren't in network. Understand that when there's a Medicare Advantage expansion too, they have to meet network adequacy. They have to meet minimum requirements to build a product there, but they're not going to have this fully robust, built out, everything's in network. That's usually not till year 2 or year 3, because there's actually behind the scenes a lot of time and money and effort and staffing that goes into contracting facilities and doctors to make them agree to terms. And I get agents that get like, I spent this money and I lost 20, 30 sales I could have had. And it's like, no, you need to go into that opportunity with that expectation. And not only that, you didn't lose the deal maybe permanently.
Right.
Keep those people as an opportunity. And if it's stay on your same med sup, stay on your same med sup. Or let me quote you a different one, see if I can lower your rate on a med sup. Let me keep that client on my back burner, my pipeline for if the network changes, then I have opportunity for the future.
Well, agents also don't realize just the amount of power and pull that they may have in that situation. If you have a group of 30 people that would actually like to get the plan, and they all generally see the same doctor group or doctor area, which happens a lot in those expansion markets, you as the agent can be instrumental in getting that provider's office contracted with the facility, with the carrier.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, let's be honest, most of the expansion markets now are rural. They have been for the past 3 or 4 years, and access to care, especially during COVID, and there's a big gap in doctors and care. So access to care is already an issue in most of these rural markets. And so, network adequacy is going to be a thing, but all these people out there in these rural areas are generally already dealing with trying to find access to care. They can't really be super choosy a lot of times, because if you live an hour away from the doctor from where you got to go access care, that's the doctor you're going to see, right?
Yep, right.
Well, and it's a little more complicated dealing with Medicare Advantage, those rural areas too, because there's a lot of FQHCs because they're rural, and their funding and their incentives and their motivations are all very different from value-based care.
Yeah, you may still see some PFFSs, you'll see PPOs, things like that.
But it's kind of its own little opportunity for sure.
Well, is it the job for the broker to go out there and contract facilities? No, but it's your money, it's your client. If you can help and, like I said, be instrumental in doing that, carriers will send out their contracting team.
Yeah, and hey, as you mentioned too, like a lot of things that there's a mentality out there with not just brokers, but a lot of people I see more societally these days, I would say, but it's more of that's not my job. That's not my role.
Absolutely.
There's kind of a feeling of that's not my place, that's not my lane, that's somebody else's job to do, but not mine. And it bothers me in a lot of ways, because at the end of the day, look, if you're a good agent, you're making a lot of money. This is a great industry with a lot of upside. And so what if you have to go the extra mile, provide a little bit of extra value for your clients, do something extra? I really am a believer too that when agents do that, it's just karma, whatever you want to call it, whatever religious or philosophical, ideology people ascribe to, if you do the right thing and you do good things over and over and over, that energy, it's going to come back to you. And when you do that as an agent, going that extra mile, I can't help but feel like those agents are the ones that get, they become very successful.
Yeah, the agents that spend a little bit extra time filling out that LAS application, or getting someone.
They get more referrals. They get better retention. They grow their business in the right way.
Yeah, the doctors you're gonna be able to work their panel. You're gonna be able to help people move to those books depending on what kind of contract they sign. There's all sorts of synergies that you can do when you actually become a more sophisticated agent. So you're seeing agents, so mailers are kind of working in some rural areas and targeted areas. One thing I've always been aware of is service area reductions, so SARs.
Yep.
So this year, Lasso, and we're out here in the West, guys, and so Lasso was a pretty big product out here. Lasso went away, and so that created a SAR. Those people have to get on another plan. So agents,
and those are MSAs for those Medicare savings accounts.
Yep. So savvy agents are always looking for service area reductions, big upheavals in the market, maybe a carrier losing
the network.
A key network. And carriers, guys, if you're paying attention to the emails and your broker managers and things like that, they're always trying to alert you to those type of things where.
Not on a timely basis, though. not necessarily all the time.
Well, and they all use these these carriers now, or all the health plan networks use like network negotiations. They use like the threat of losing the network as like this leverage negotiating tactic now too, where all the Medicare beneficiaries get caught up in it too. And it's like, okay, now we're trying to get this deal signed, leak out the information that this plan's possibly going to lose access to this network. And then they're going to have all their beneficiaries and the brokers put pressure on the carrier to ink the deal. There's all sorts of intricacies that go in.
And then on the other side of that, you have the broker that will immediately contact their book of business on that plan and
Yeah.
Time to move.
Make a plan to move them. Yeah.
Which is also why the good carriers have not had any of those contract renewals be a 1-1. They're like a 4-1 or a 6-1. Those renewal dates are now, for those big medical groups, they're no longer a 1-1. So they can't use OEP as leverage to do that.
Yeah.
Well, and that brings up another big, or what do we call that? Lapse in education, right?
A gap, just a gap.
Not lapse, but a gap in education is just the, reading those carrier emails. I can't tell you how many times agents will just delete any carrier email that comes in, but if it's from their FMO, Agent Boost Marketing, they're reading it. And they come to us for all those SAR letters, like, what's happening in the market? What's going on? You haven't heard? You got like 4 emails about it.
Yeah. I think that to that point, even with the training, post-COVID, the carriers all did a lot better job, and the local broker managers of putting out trainings. They're tasked with, it's a measurable metric for their management that they can see what trainings they have on the calendar. They're always putting out trainings. They're always putting out emails. And to your point, if you're a broker that sells in multiple states, I mean, it's like drinking from a fire hose, because you're getting, especially this time of year, daily emails from all these carrier partners in all these different states. And, it can be a lot. It can be overwhelming to stay on top of it. But those type of things, the agents in the know, those are the savvy, sophisticated agents. And then we have other agents where they're like, I'll let you guys all worry about that stuff, and you just tell me if there's anything that you think I should know about.
Give me the cliff notes.
Yeah.
And, I will add to that, too. One of the things just for agents to be conscientious of, too, is that, carriers, like, we look at them as suppliers and we're distributors, right? And that's kind of the arrangement. But, there's only so much shelf space. If you go into a retail store, they only have room inside their store to sell so many products. And so, again, it's like you're, as an agent out there who's carrying these products and you're going to market to sell, the carriers know too that the more shelf space that they can take up with you, the more that you're going to sell their products, the good ones anyway.
Right.
And there's carriers who are doing a great job of putting out more content, more training, getting more agent loyalty that they're building with that community. And so therefore those agents are, it's front or top of mind, and they're selling their products more. And then there's other carriers out there who are just candidly doing a poor job of winning over the agents and taking up that shelf space. And so then agents aren't selling their products as much. And then they sometimes go, well, we had a good bid and we had a good product. How come we didn't sell more? And I mean, there's a lot more than that, but a big part of it is just they don't do a great job occupying that shelf space.
And I've always been a proponent of one plan does not fit all, right? If you look at my personal book of business, it's all over the place. I got every carrier I rep with, I have policies on, right? That's a lot of agents, I think, have kind of diverted to that, to your point, is they're selling the products and services that they're in front of them, right?
Comfortable with.
Yeah, they're comfortable with. They know they have, their broker manager on speed dial, and they've experienced, a decent retention rate over the years. So they're just like, let's put everybody in this carrier and not even look back, right? But I don't think that's necessarily a great idea, especially if there's anything that goes wrong. You're spending your whole, open enrollment period trying to protect your book or just moving them. So it's
having all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, don't ever do that. That's not always a good fit, but
yeah,
a lot of brokers do.
Well, while we're kind of at it, Bryan, what else are we missing? Anything else you're seeing? Like, what about like Irma stuff? Do most brokers know about Irma? Do most brokers know about like group retiree plans? Do most people know these things?
Only if they've come across it. I have noticed that it's only a problem when it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
And I tell agents, it's okay not to know. It's okay if you've been in the business for 5 years, whatever, and you've never sold anybody that had an Irma, event, and they don't know that it's 2-year look back from their
MAGI.
Yeah, from their adjusted gross income. They've never had to deal with it before, so they don't know what to do. And I tell them it's okay. Let me find an answer for you. I don't know. It's okay to tell someone you don't know.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of brokers kind of get scared, is that they think they need to be an expert on everything right at that appointment, and that's not necessarily going to be the case all the time.
Yeah. Here's the other thing I've told agents before, let's say you've only been selling insurance for a year or two and you're new. You can always say like, hey, as far as I've been licensed, I've never heard that before. Let me get you an answer.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I say that's a great question. I've never heard that before. Let me call my sales manager or whatever.
In the middle of employment, I get calls all the time.
Okay.
Oh, hey. And I had to preface that, with a lot of agents before. You're going to call me in an appointment.
Prep me.
Please tell me right when I pick up the
that
phone.
I'm on speaker with your client.
Because I have developed very good relationships and I have, friends. A lot of brokers are actually friends of mine.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, what's hanging?
Yeah. I'll shoot the crap with them. But if I know they're in an appointment, I put on 100%, business face. And
the other thing is too, we have a Slack channel built for that kind of stuff where hopefully, you're in an appointment, maybe you don't want them to know, and you have your laptop, you can just put the question out in the Slack channel and get a pretty quick, immediate answer too. I mean, it's pretty easy to get that, right?
By the way, any of our field agents out there watching this, please join the Slack channel. You'll get an invite. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we have probably 200 or 300 of our virtual agents that are using that daily, and it's very vibrant, very robust. Our internal team, management, leadership at Agent Boost is all in those, and they're able to get access and support to that quickly and efficiently. And it's like that group knowledge, right? That group think where people can ask questions, pass leads.
But then again, you do have those brokers that are very private, especially in their marketing techniques, and they don't want to share anything that they're doing that's successful.
That's okay. I mean, look, you have that's the thing is we have a community of all walks, like where some people are very much of a scarcity mindset like that, and others are very much in like an abundance mindset, and they're going, hey, I'm not threatened by that. What I'm doing, like, here's the thing. I could give somebody a whole roadmap of some of the things I'm doing, initiatives and growth, and here's how I'm doing what. And I can pass that off to somebody, and they still can't go execute.
We do it every week on this podcast.
Yeah, and they still can't go do it because if it were easy, everybody would go do it.
Right.
They just can't. So it's not like some super secret thing out there. I mean, agents sometimes perceive that what they're doing is super unique. Trust me, we have agents come all the time and say, like, I've got like the most incredible idea, but you got to swear you're not going to tell anybody. You're not going to leak this. It's very proprietary. And you're like, I've seen this like 30 times already. Like, I hate to burst your bubble.
Yeah.
Well, what's been really working as of late is the new plan that we've been authorized to represent.
Yeah, that IE-SNP.
Yeah, IE-SNP. It's been phenomenal.
Through Optum United. Yep.
Yeah, people are just going gangbusters with that in assisted living facilities and senior communities, and it's brought back the mindset that.
It's reinvigorated a few.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's one of the things too, Brian, that we haven't really talked about it yet, but I think there's a certain, and here's what I don't understand. I'm different than a lot of people. It's never enough. I'm never satisfied. I'm never complacent. I don't care if we hit 200% of goals. That's great. I'll celebrate the small win for a night, 24, 48 hours, but then it's back at it because I go, I didn't set the goals high enough. I should have even moved the goalpost more. And
the old Comcast attitude, right?
It's just never good enough. It's never good enough. And I'm okay with that. But I think agents don't have that same mentality. And so they're just not in that same mode. They get complacent. I think sometimes those agents that have been around for a while too, they do the same presentation, the same methods. It kind of feels like Groundhog Day every single day over and over. And so after you've been doing it for 3 or 5 or 7 years, and you have a comfortable income, it's like just the monotony sets in, and then people aren't reinvigorated. They don't like have that same burning passion or fire to go do it. You know?
And I like to.
So how do you reinvigorate agents and keep them?
I call it resurrect them. Okay. I like resurrecting agents because they already have the base knowledge that's required to do what we do, right? And once you have base knowledge, it's hard to lose that. That's why we can pass through those first couple modules in AHIP, and you can just skip to the test. You don't have to click through the slides. But I love resurrecting brokers that have been complacent. They're fine with their however many clients they have on the books. It's paying their bills and renewals, all that. But I love teaching them that it's not enough. Mm-hmm. And I've done that with a few brokers, and they've come back saying, "Wow, this has been I've never had a year like this before.
Yeah.
This has been great.
You know what helps resurrect people is when they take their eye off their book of business for 2 or 3 years and don't work that hard.
They lose a third.
And they're like, huh,
Yeah.
I guess I'm not making it to retirement like I thought I was going to. So time to dust off the old briefcase and get back out there, right? We see that all the time.
It can happen pretty
quick. Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta, it's easier to maintain than it is to completely rebuild or be resurrected. But yeah, you have done a really good job of reinvigorating, resurrecting some agents that were very good producers, years ago and are back.
And I would say, man, that's a really kudos. That's a very rewarding feeling to know. And that's part of a lot of the reason that we all love what we do is that, before when I was an agent and we were helping, that beneficiary and you're saving them money and you'd have those clients that are in tears because they couldn't pay for medications and groceries and they were picking between those. And you're actually feeling that what I'm doing is noble and good and I'm helping people. It was great. And that's kind of the same feeling that we all have as an organization when we're helping. We know that end consumer, we're helping them. But now there's that other layer of agents and agencies that we're helping shape like their careers. We're helping them build something meaningful. We're, building value to those people and changing their lives. That's actually very impactful and rewarding, and I think you've kind of had, several agents tell you how much of an impact you've had helping them even over this last year.
Sure. Yeah, it's been cool with coming out of COVID, right? Like a lot of those agents that were field agents kind of didn't really know, they didn't want to adapt into basically virtual telemarketers during the COVID years. And so they kind of thought that may be the end of them in their career. And fortunately, we've come on the other side of it. And there's a lot of agents that are reinvigorated and things are starting to work again. What worked before, they've been getting back out into the field. And I do think that that's a really important thing for agents to keep that value and that offering going forward, because we see that as a big, important part of the industry. And I think especially with seniors, and I think just with humanity in general, the more everything goes to virtual and AI and blah, 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 you're going to see older people especially, they're just like, I don't want to go to a website. There's just a certain percentage of people who just would prefer to drive down to Main Street and go sit with somebody in person or have someone come out to their house, or at least know that it's an actual real local human being that they talk to that lives in a community or nearby. I think there's just always going to be a need for that.
Well, just yesterday, I had an agent drive down from another state, neighboring state here, and he needed a couple kits, enrollment kits for some Utah appointments that he had around the valley. And we obliged him, got him what he needed. Then he came back after the appointments and sat down with me and he's like, well, the kits that I had didn't have the enrollment kits inside them. So I had to swap them out and get him some other ones. But I'm like, what do you need the actual application for?
Paper. Yeah.
Well, I don't use any electronic application. I write paper all the time. And I was, oh my gosh, man, give me a break. I mean, can I just buy you?
Did you spend time trying to convince them into adopting technology?
He rode out there on his dinosaur.
I had already been to his house previously where, in the other state, and I showed him how to do it back then. And yeah. But I offered at that time yesterday, I said, you ever think about just getting out of the business? Is this business passing you by, do you think? Because it's not hard to sell your book.
Right.
And not hard at all. And we'll buy it. Anybody out there will buy your book of business. And he's like, you know what? Yeah, that's probably where I'm headed in the next year.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, there's always the time, of course, when people are ready to hang it up. But that's one thing.
I think we already saw a fair amount of that over the last couple of years. It's like you don't just need to know Medicare. You have to know technology. Now you have to know systems. You have to know all the rules and the call. I mean, it's more and more every year. And it's just, look, it's not for everyone.
Well, you can teach an old dog new tricks, so to speak, right? But there are some out there you just can't.
Whenever my kids come into the office, they go, "Oh, you guys have a fax machine like in the TV show The Office." That's what
Skippy.
I'm like, yeah, we have to have a fax machine still somehow going into 2024. But I will never miss the days of handwriting those paper apps. Remember like community events where you're trying to fill out apps as fast as possible and your hands cramped because you're trying to write so fast, and then you're trying to rip those stupid apps out of the back of those booklets.
Then you're waiting 2 hours for all the faxes to go through to the carrier.
Oh, I got pretty proficient, man, at those. I had those sales kits in front of everybody, and I took my stamp that had my name and my writing number and just was like stamping every sales kit that already had my writing ID and my signature on it on every one of them, and was walking people through like, okay, follow with me on page whatever. We're doing the enrollment.
Either way, it's like, man, carrier tools or Sunfire nowadays where you're just putting in the MBI and it pre-populates all that. I'm like, man, that is just so nice and so easy and so much more sophisticated than the way it used to be.
But we talked about, grassroots efforts coming back, direct marketing still has a place in the industry. But there has been kind of a decline in those marketing meetings, right? Those sales meetings that people have been doing.
Well, go figure.
Huge decline.
Yeah. I mean, for those listening, there's a few key markets out there that still have good numbers of attendees where that works. And just think of, we're talking about agents all throughout the country, the strategies, 70, 80% of the strategies are going to be vanilla, they're macro. I mean, you can apply them anywhere. But then there's key markets where things are a little bit niche and a little nuanced. And there are those little markets where those community meetings work. So don't listen to this and say, oh, those guys don't know what they're talking about. No, 80, 90% of the time, they really are not a great return.
ROI,
They're not a great return of not only the capital it takes to market the event, but also the time invested and, and then the money you spend to do them. It's not, but there are a few markets that it still pencils out.
And that's coming from guys that built their books of business off of doing those, off of hundreds of restaurant events and Golden Corrals, and
not to mention hundreds of thousands of direct mail pieces that we do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this: we're getting close to the end here, but what are you seeing with agents and ACA, like the proliferation or the combination of agents also writing ACA in the field? Are they excited about that? Are they writing more of it, do you think?
They're very excited, and we came to find out when we actually took that vertical on that a lot of agents were already doing it, and since we didn't offer that as a
line of business,
there, they didn't know that we could support them that way. But to those agents' credit, as soon as we were able to offer that, they lock, stock, and barrel moved it to us. So very loyal broker community out there with us. I love them all. They keep the wheels running here for sure. But yeah, most of them are actually doing ACA and doing quite well at it. Whether it's just, grabbing the spouse that's, losing the employer group coverage because the other spouse is going on Medicare.
You write a T65 and you have the spouse.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether it's just grabbing that low hanging fruit or actually, going out there and marketing that you represent ACA plans.
Prospect. Yeah.
It's all across the board.
Yeah. If you're out there in the field, you're a traditional, what we call a traditional field agent. I think that's a very, very easy win, easy add-on.
It's a must.
It's a must, yeah. And the per head dollar amounts continually ticking upwards and making it worthwhile. Some of the markets are even more than a Medicare per member per month.
So, Bryan, we reviewed a little bit, some knowledge gaps. We talked about some marketing initiatives like direct mail pieces a little bit. We talked about community. They call them community meetings. I call them enrollment meetings, right? When everybody's saying, thanks for coming to my enrollment meeting. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not here to just disseminate info. I'm here to sign you up.
Absolutely.
I would call them enrollment meetings, but we talked about those. Do we want to talk at all like retail or any other grassroots before we wrap, or anything else that you've been kind of seeing from the field?
I'm seeing there's a big decline in retail events as well ever since the big debacle with Walmart and all that.
We haven't even got into that on the podcast yet. If you're doing well at a Walmart this year, we'd like to hear from you.
I'm not a huge fan of retail. I've done it. I'll support agents that want to do it. I'll actually advocate for them to get into a spot, if
they want it. Here's what I don't like about it, and I've learned this, is it's very passive. Like you're hoping, you're dedicating all that time hoping that there's some business that's going to walk through and hit you on the forehead, or the agents that are having success are probably not being very compliant and they're stepping outside their booth. And I've heard stories they're aggressively chasing people down aisles practically, in retail stores. Obviously they're hustling, but at the same time, it's just a hard way to make a buck. hoping that people walk through the door, whereas I would rather dedicate those same times, hours, energy into something that I can tangibly see results from personally.
Well, you know, nowadays people that are doing retail are fine with the numbers they get, whether it be 10, 15, or maybe 40 apps out of a retail event.
Because there's like, hey, I don't have a plan, so just stick me here and hopefully I write something.
And they're fine with it.
Yeah, they like being reactive. They don't like having to put
Proactive.
themselves get shot down or deal with any rejection.
Yep.
They like just being able to be passive and sit there and help.
It's not a huge part of what I tell agents to do as far as marketing goes.
So would you say anecdotally overall the sales or the enrollments that are coming from retail opportunities are on the upswing or on the decline?
Very much the decline.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Not that I have any stats, and I don't know that, you know, retailers like the Krogers and the Walmarts and, you know, everybody out there is going to be sharing that data a lot, but we'll have to see. You know, maybe Deft will have some stuff coming out of AEP or something with retailers. Maybe
It'll be interesting to see what
some numbers after AEP as well.
Yeah, and what happens with the retail opportunity this year. We've heard.
But I would tell everybody this, like, be in control of your destiny as much as you can. Like, you know, if you're out there and you're worried about changes with CMS, changes about compensation, you're worried about opportunities, things that were working that aren't working, try to control the outcome as much as you can and invest in initiatives that you yourself can own and control and operate to produce business for you. Don't be at the mercy of some other carrier or another entity that in any given time they can just pull the rug out from under you.
Well, one last opportunity that is really, I think, is a fantastic opportunity is provider-based marketing.
Yeah.
And we didn't even touch on that, but that's got huge upside as long as the agent has the right talk track.
We've been banging that drum for a decade, right? Before it was cool too, you know, talking about that.
Even down to dentists.
Yeah, well, I want to do a whole podcast on provider-based marketing. And
we can spend an hour digging in the weeds.
The problem is, though, agents that are really good at that don't want to share their tips and tricks, and because they're all very. Well, but we know from our end of things we can
share a lot of the things that we put into our trainings for our brokers that we can just put out here on a podcast. Because again, it's like, look, you have the strategic and you have the tactical, and we can come out and tell people the strategy and how to do it. But again, it's how many are going to go take that and run with it and execute is going to be a very limited number, right? Anyway.
But the brokers that are currently, you know, doing that, and they're doing it well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's for me one of those initiatives that we've been steering people to for a very long time.
Yep.
And it's going to always be, if you're going to be more of a, I'm in the local community, this is like my mantra, this is like my identity as an agent, and this is who and what I am. I think that if you're not doing provider marketing, you know, working hand in hand with them, the business is passing you by as we speak.
Yeah, but that one does take, you got to be a little bit more educated. You got to be a more sophisticated agent, you know? So I think we'll probably do a whole podcast just on that, because I think that's a great topic, and we can talk about, you know, different care model contracts and different compensation models, and carriers to doctors.
And creating that win-win-win to where the consumer's winning, the provider's winning, and the agent is winning, and how that relationship can all work.
We're always trying to get carriers and doctor and providers to come on and talk about those things, but they all get mired in legal and compliance and their entities.
And come to your podcast. What can I say?
We think that you'll like some of our guests that we have upcoming already for next quarter. We have some really cool guests, and I think y'all are going to really like the content we're putting out on the podcast. But yeah, to your point, they're like, oh, you guys should do an episode on this. I'm like, trust me, we're working on it. We have like 5 or 6 guests that we're still waiting from legal and compliance and PR to see, like, we have to give them pre-screened bullet points about what we're going to talk about, what we're going to discuss. And I promise I'm not trying to capture you in a trap. You know,
it's a gotcha conversation.
We shoot from the hip, and we just like this kind of free, casual style of podcast. But, you know, it doesn't always work out for somebody that's like, you know, like a VP level or higher, like some of these carriers or provider groups. So,
well, you're going to be one of the official co-host replacements, B. Yep. You'll be one of the if we ever can't make it on the weekly content, for sure. We've been too long to get you on with your skill set and your knowledge, for sure. So
this is, if you've ever watched any like the Full Sends, the Joe Rogans, or anything else like that, you'll be a recurring guest for us, Bri.
Well, where's my cigar and my whiskey then?
Bring it next time. Yeah, exactly.
That's the other type of podcast. That's the
Gotcha.
The after dark.
hours,
That's
yeah.
that's
Boost
we tell
After Dark.
we tell our best stories of
That should be another podcast. Is your craziest stories in home.
Oh, those are out there.
they'll have to have not safe for work disclaimers.
We're gonna have like a disclaimer before you watch a podcast episode, like a legal thing that's this long.
Yeah, this one might make you sick to your stomach.
But hey, if South Park can get away with what they get away with, we can probably say whatever. As long as we put a disclaimer up there.
We won't talk any carriers. No carriers will be reputations. Will be
no
harmed.
names.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Sounds good. Catch you all next week.
See you. Happy Thanksgiving. If anyone hears it before Thanksgiving.
Agent Boost.